So you got like Kenny Omega and Ospreay, and like they're the two guys that everybody looks at as like, okay, they're the two best wrestlers today, right? But you watch the way they work, and just see if you feel me on this. It's very complicated. Like their matches there's like a million things going on. You know, there's not like a lot of just basic wrestling 101. It's like they're doing like a million things. Then you had a guy like Cody, who he's kind of like in the principles of, hey, let's just be basic out here and everything. You look at where AEW started 5 years ago, okay, and look at where they are now, and look at where Cody started 5 years ago, and Kenny and the Bucks and those guys. And fast forward 5 years and look at where Cody is now, and Kenny is now, and the Bucks and stuff. I think it's a perfect, advertisement. And bro, the simplicity of wrestling is what gets you to the next level. If you're really good at all of the basics and all the simplicity and working of the style where you're not risking injury, you're not getting hurt, your shoulder's not blown out and stuff. Bro, what do you think there's something to that? Do you think Kenny and Will go overboard too much in their matches is what I'm trying to say. Because I think they can wrestle a simpler style. They choose to wrestle a complicated style. What do you think?
So I think if you watch like their match at Forbidden Door that they had when he gave him the move on his head or whatever, the Tiger Driver, right. I feel like up front they kept it pretty basic. Now, granted, their pretty basic is still a lot more advanced than most people.
Right.
So instead of doing just a basic tackle drop down, like they're going to do 10 other things and get to their standoff spot as opposed to what I would do with you per se. Right. But I also think that's what you're buying when you go to watch that match. Like the Young Bucks, like their gimmick is that the way I look at it, their gimmick is that they're not traditional wrestlers. Like they are going to where they probably should finish the match. They're going to go another 15 minutes after that. Right. And they're going to do it in the sense of like, that's what you're paying for. Like you're paying to watch the Young Bucks and know that all the ring psychology that you thought by reading the dirt sheets you learned just goes completely out the window. Right. If that makes sense, right?
Yeah, so they're just trying to get pops. Because the first time basically this guy that was my young boy in Tijuana when I used to do shows there back like 20 years ago, Ron Rivera, he was their trainer.
Okay.
So I almost think like the Young Bucks, when I watch them, they just want to get pops. Okay. And you do pop at the whole match because they're very creative and entertaining.
Right.
I remember one time I went to this autograph session that Teddy, the Fugitive Heart, did in Stampede, and the Young Bucks were there, and they had their own table. Bro, the line was through the door because they took the time to talk to everybody and make them feel special instead of shuffling them through.
Correct.
You know, and I always admired them for that. And like even when they came to Mexico, they were always doing creative stuff and killing it and easy to work with. But I will say this, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I may be misclassifying your fan base. I almost feel like your fan base is full of a lot of like nerds and geeks. And I don't say that in a demeaning way, nerds and geeks. And I have a lot of friends that are both. And at the same time, like hardcore fans that just want to see good wrestling, kind of like Tony does. Where the WWE seems to have more casual fans, and their hardcore fans are already used to that style. But guys like Orton and Roman and Miz and Cody, they prove that you don't have to do a million things to get over, But like you said, that crowd will not accept Will Ospreay just doing a basic Randy Orton match. They bring him in because he's probably the most spectacular wrestler in the world. Him, Vikingo, Ricochet, once they let him loose, if he does go to AEW. I mean, I just thought in WWE, he's already been released, correct?
Yeah. I think his contract was up.
Bro, I thought that I managed him in Lucha Underground. Plus, I recommended him to Lucha Underground from PWG. That guy's amazing.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even doing anything in WWE, what he could really do.
So I think, the Bucks, their biggest thing is like Cody, like Roman, they connect with the audience, right? And they did it through their YouTube channel. They do it however, like you said, just talking to people. That's where the younger talent, I think, messes up in the fact, like they take for granted what the Young Bucks went through to get to where they are, what Kenny went through to get to where he is. So I think like Will Ospreay versus Bryan Danielson, they didn't do a lot. I mean, towards the back end, they did some cool swerve stuff, but ideally they really didn't do a lot. And that's because the people were already ready for it. Conan, to go back to your question about our fan base, yeah, I believe our fan base is much more intelligent than just the casual fan. So they do expect a higher quality. But I was telling Disco while you weren't here, like, I think that the fan base is just so excited to not be at WWE. And that's kind of what it was in the beginning. It was like we got away with a lot of stuff because they were very forgiving in the sense, like, thank God we're not at a WWE show where the wrestler is going to be in the ring for 30 minutes before the opponent comes out because we got to sit through a commercial break and 2 pre-tapes and blah, 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 right? So I think we had we were fortunate in that matter that we can kind of play off of those things. I always try to make the joke, but I'm serious. Like, I wish our fans just had more friends. You know what I mean? And like, instead of just
they're an antisocial group of people, kind of like.
Yeah, I mean, they're a lot. It's, like.
Well, the thing is, if you go back and watch Nitros, right? When the wrestlers are coming out, like along the rails, like the fans are like. They're going crazy. They want to be seen on camera. They're trying to get in the shot. Yeah. It's like the AEW crowd, even the WWE crowd, somewhat. You know,
sure.
The fans are like kind of fans, like they're kind of like scared, like when the camera's on them.
I think a lot of them, QT. Would I be wrong to say a lot of them are like socially awkward or no?
Yeah, I mean, they're very timid. Like when we go to the airports, right, and there's collectors there. Even the collectors, like. They're
like emotionless.
They just stare at you, and like and it's like, dude, just say hi. Like, I'm not mad at you for wanting to make money. I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? Like, but don't be weird. That's the weird. Like, don't be and I get it if you're socially awkward or if you're intimidated, but like, we all put our pants on the same way, and I think that's just the way the world is.
If you had the class of
wrestling.
If you had to classify, they're just a product of society, and society is like that in general.
Yeah,
but it isn't like the '90s, bro. The '90s was such a wild time,
and you have all these artistic types now that are, everyone's an artist, and everyone's very like, they just like I said, it's like when I walk through an arena or I'm leaving and I see the fans, like if they just said, "QT, can I take a picture with you?" But they're just so like. Put off, like I don't want to say weird. They're just weird, but like it's like, dude, just turn around and say hi, man. Like I'm not gonna bite you.
Let me ask you this, Trent.
Before Disco asks, because I'm very interested in this, because I may be wrong, and that's what I want to be rectified.
Okay.
When I say that the fan base, not in a demeaning or minimizing anybody, is nerd geeks with hardcore fans. Am I right or am I off topic? And you tell me what your fan base is.
I think nerd culture has taken over wrestling as opposed to the jacked up MMA guys now, right? Like the Affliction shirts that kind of went to MMA because it was tough, and it wasn't because what happened was wrestling used to be really cool, and then we exposed it as an industry so much that it's so hard. Like if I go to a bar and wrestling's on. Why does someone have to sit next to me? Like, that's fake, right? Like, of course I know it's fake. Like, I don't care,
but you know what my answer to that is, QT? Very simple. You do know that Iron Man doesn't fly. You do know that Spider-Man doesn't throw webs, but they do good numbers because people are entertained. Are you entertained?
So
yes or no?
And that's my biggest thing about the wrestling I like. I think it's just a matter of the person that sits next to me that will try to give me every reason why they shouldn't watch. Right. And I'll ask them like, all right, well, what do you think is like insulting you watching this? Oh, the way the guy forearms the other guy 30 times and nothing happens. It's like, okay, well, I can either explain it to them. Well, this is a stronger style or whatever. Right. Or I could just say, hey, you know what, students, like, let's try not to do that. Just throw a fake punch. It's okay. Like people know it's wrestling.
You know that in Mexico, QT, fans were coming up to each other. I saw this many times, and even relatives of the wrestlers in the dressing room, they would come up to each other and pretend to hit them and slap each other. Jesus. And I go, bro, do you not see that they're making fun of you?
Correct.
And you still keep doing it on TV?
Yeah, that's I think, like I said, if you can think about from an outsider's perspective of that doesn't like wrestling, how could we bring them in? A lot of it, sometimes it could be like what I think AEW is great at is just telling people like, hey, this is some of the coolest you're ever going to see, and hope that they don't try to, poke holes in it. Whereas like WWE, it's the same thing. Like, oh, this is going to be the coolest spectacle of wrestling, right? Like, don't tell them it's going to be the greatest work that you're ever going to see. Cause sometimes you might get a match that doesn't have that. Right.
Right.
So I think, like, again, there's a lot that could be misconstrued and stuff, but definitely nerd culture has taken over because I've seen it with the students.
Let me give you the perfect example. Okay.
And here's the thing that you did not see when I broke into the business with Disco. Dude, you saw zero LBGTQ, and you see it a lot now.
Yeah, well, I think it's just more socially acceptable.
Again, they're a product of society.
I'm going to give you. I just thought of this while we were talking. AEW, like the inception was kind of, they took, so non-WWE wrestling I've always considered as like, ever since WCW has been gone, is independent wrestling, right?
Sure.
So AEW took like all the best elements of independent wrestling and threw it on the main stage. But independent wrestling, bro, the independent scene, when you're not in WWE and you're making money, bro, it's the Comic Cons.
Correct.
So when you've married your audience to the comic book crowd audience, that's the audience that we took and brought with us, to put on TV on the main stage. And it's an indie wrestling crowd. It's a Comic-Con crowd, right? And so now AEW is like, they have that crowd because that's indie wrestling. That's where we go to autograph signings, Comic-Cons or whatever stuff. Mm-hmm. But now it's like we have that crowd, and it's like, okay, what do we do to expand outside this crowd? Because crowd, because I was saying, because that crowd is a very difficult crowd to attract people outside those genres, comic books and wrestling.
Of course. I think a lot of it is, again, they don't really have like, okay, so for instance, in high school, I had a lot of friends, right? But out of all of those friends, I only had 2 that I would watch wrestling with. And the 2 that I watched wrestling with were very mad at me when I would go to parties on a Monday night and I wouldn't watch Raw with them. And it was like, well, I'm 16, 17. I'm trying to
girls, right?
Yeah. I'm like, I'll still watch it. I just don't want to, revolve my life around it. Right. And so some of those people like myself end up growing out of it. And then you start doing other stuff. Whereas I always was into it. I just wasn't going to put that before real life. Right. And, some of these people, they this is their life, and that's fine. Yeah. But I don't know. It's just, I think that because there's a huge fan base for comic books. There just is. There's a huge. So I almost thought why don't we try to look for the conventions and piggyback our shows off of them? And there's ways to do stuff like that. But again, the fan base is just completely different. And I noticed it with the students because back in the day, I was like the small guy at 6 foot, 240 pounds.
But I trade too.
All my students are a lot now of them
huge.
It's very rare that we get these athletic, these guys that are like, the physicality. It's like, well, what's my character? They already have their character ready. They haven't even stepped in the ring yet. And they're telling me how they're going to be a goblin that came from outer space. And I'm like, you can't, that insults people, right? Even Chris Statlander, when she first started, she kept telling me about being an alien. And I was like, why don't you just be Chris Statlander and have you could be a fan of aliens and a fan of comics and all this stuff, but just be you, because it's hard. You can't connect with everybody. And if I'm into restaurants. I used to manage restaurants and all these things. So I can cook a cheeseburger and it could be the greatest cheeseburger in the world, right? And it's going to take 30 minutes to prep every burger. But that fan base that's going to come for that burger, that's going to write reviews about it, is going to only have about 6 or 7 people. Whereas if I just make the McDonald's burger, I might sell billions of burgers. And it all is about what I care about. Going back to what I was saying about AEW, it's what are we trying to do? And I think only Tony really knows that vision. And I don't even ask the question anymore because it's that's not my job. My job is just to find out what he wants the day of that day or the week before, whatever, and make it happen. Because at the end of the day, I hear people say it about, he just books for what he wants. Okay, so if that's what he wants to do, he's putting all these people under under contracts and stimulating the economy. At the end of the day, if that's what he wants, again, do I have to agree with it? No, but if he's paying me, I'm going to do my best to make sure he gets everything he wants because that's my job.
That's the best way of looking at it. Yo, what's up? I just want to thank you guys for watching this clip. Don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. And join our YouTube membership for hours and hours of exclusive, unedited, uncensored content. And being a member will help you get involved in our upcoming live streams. Thank you for your support. Thank you for riding with us. I know you got a lot of other podcast choices, be it wrestling or other ones. And thank you for picking us. Boom.